Welcome everyone. Today I'm going to talk about the content side that was just referred to and how we've gone back to really look at some storytelling fundamentals to work out how to use 360 and VR to tell stories and create a series of pioneering examples to explore just that, so we could start to work out what VR and 360 was going to be good for. Just as in the early days of television, television was regarded as a box with wires on it and people had to work out what to do with it. We've been taking the same approach to virtual reality and really wanted to take it beyond just being able to put a 360 camera in a studio and film what was there. Instead, be creating new things in new ways with this exciting technology. So we went back to the sort of fundamentals. VR's not new. It's being studied in university labs, and we wanted to really understand what was special about it in terms of its ability to help you understand a location, its sense of presence, this very visceral experience. But we didn't want to be just limited to experiences. We really did want to tell stories with that had the potential to change attitudes. And following the BBC public purpose of bringing the UK to the world and the world to the UK, really use it to help people understand the world. So I actually started by creating a 360 virtual reality experience all about 360 to explain it to people in the BBC with the BBC's Newsnight technology editor. We really thought about what stories we could show off with this new form of storytelling, ones where a sense of location was important to understanding what was going on, and where presence helped you have a deeper human understanding of what was happening there. And through that, we wanted to really explore a sort of new grammar of filmmaking. 2 years ago, people were saying you had to, between each 360 shot, you had to fade to black. We wanted to work out, just as early filmmakers did in the 20s and 30s, how to create a sequence of shots, how to direct attention, how to create engaging films without close-ups and cutaways, all the sort of usual techniques of filmmaking. So we started, our first proper report was from the Calais migrant camp, and I'll just play this in the background. It proved that filming with 6 GoPros was tricky in a fast-gathering, news-gathering environment where we had migrants jumping on trucks, but it was incredibly effective for capturing the actual atmosphere of the camps and showing people what it was like to be there and what the conditions were like. So this was early last summer, a year ago. But after that, we wanted to, we started creating some more standard BBC News reports using 360. And in Paris in November last year, I did a report with the reporter Matthew Price where we showed a sort of prototype report of showing what it was like in Paris just after the terror attacks. But we also wanted to experiment with how we could use CGI to tell stories as well, and what the difference would be. So working with Aardman Animation, we tried to work out how we could use a CGI-based virtual reality experience watched through an Oculus Rift with full head tracking, how we could use that to put people inside the story. So they were on the beach meeting with a group of refugees, and on the boat experiencing the fears as they made the treacherous journey across the Mediterranean. So we were responding to news footage like this. We created something which, I'm going to show you the trailer, and it looks like a sort of simple, low polygon animation. The wonderful thing about the CGI VR is that these people look at you in response to you, and the way in which you can build in, this is just using very simple gaze interaction. But if you watch this as an animation, it would not have the same effect. As soon as you put on the VR headset, it has a very profound and emotional effect on you. And I've made many news journalists who've been out there and reported these scenes feel extremely emotional having watched this. So I'm just going to show you the trailer for that. This was created with BBC Connector Studio and Aardman Animation. And they really brought so much in terms of the artwork and their different way of thinking to the VR world. Has this got sound, please? Can we hear the sound? Thank you.
He is tired. We are all tired.
They were supposed to be here an hour ago.
Maybe they don't come.
So what we're starting to do there with VR is really what you can never do with television. We are putting you there with those people. You have a simple avatar, you've got a life jacket on and legs. We can take that further and do more experiments around embodiment, and we're going to do so. But that's starting to really push where you sit within a story as a viewer. Whoops. Sorry, this is being a bit tricky. Let me move this on. Oops. We'll go back here. So we've also, again, continued to explore in more detail how we can create more elaborate 360 films and use more techniques to create stronger narratives in those. I still say we're at early days, and these stories are all quite simple. The Resistance of Honey is a profile of a beekeeper who makes honey and music from his bees and honey, and every honey has a different sound. So he makes electronic music from them. But it takes you deep into his world, where you see what it's like to be with him in his music mixing studio and indeed inside a beehive. The True Story of Betty Corrigal is another one. That's a story by George Mackay Brown set in Orkney that we visualised through the landscapes of Orkney and used BBC Research and Develeopment's binaural audio to showcase that. And there's one I'm going to just show you a couple of clips from, which is a documentary using very intense interviews with a couple of firemen who rescued 6 children from a house fire in Southall a couple of years ago on Christmas Day. And it starts in a fairly conventional way, though, of course, if you view this through a VR headset, you are there in the fire station with them in a much greater sense.
It was Christmas Day 2012. I spent the day with my family and my 2 children, opening their presents. I had to come in and start a night shift, Christmas Day night. Started at 7 o'clock in the evening. At around 10 to 8, we had a call come in. We all get dressed in full firefighting clothing. Once everybody's dressed, we mount the appliance and make our way on blue lights and sirens to the incident. It was Christmas Day 20...
Oops. Sorry about this. So that's all going around you in one shot. And then what we've done that's really extraordinary in this is actually reconstruct the fire and include some point of view shots, which we've slowed down so we don't make anyone sick, but that really puts you there in the fire with the firemen in quite a frightening way. And I'm just going to play you. This is the rectangular, the spread out view, but you can just sort of imagine what this feels like if you've got a VR headset on and the potential for this in the future.
I believe the father of the children smashed the windows in the kitchen. In that situation, it lets oxygen in and that exacerbates the conditions. We heard kids screaming down the other end of the building to where we were.
Can't see it well on this screen, but this is the fireman walking up the stairs, which we slowed down, but it's very impactful.
By this point, the smoke was virtually 100%. You can't see your hands. I believe the father...
Oops. So I showed this to some members of the London Fire Brigade recently, and it was obviously quite nerve-wracking doing so, because I did think, I've not been in a house fire, they have many times, but they were very, very impressed and really were surprised and found it extraordinarily powerful, the way in which it was able to convey to people what they dealt with as firefighters when they entered a fire. And this is a quote from Ron Dobson, who's the London Fire Commissioner. that it really did show what it was like to be there. And that's what we've been trying to do with all these storytelling experiments. So we've been doing lots of experimentation across the BBC. I've only shown you a few experiments today that we've been doing with R&D. The BBC's innovation website, Taster, launched a series of really exciting VR and 360 demos in June, and there's still lots of them available there. Large Hadron Collider 360 is by far the most popular news film we've had on the YouTube website, with over 1 million hits. There's a great David Attenborough 360 film as well, where he meets a dinosaur and you really see the scale and size of the dinosaur. But it's early days, and we're very aware that we're a little bit ahead of the audience yet. But what was important for us was to start to understand the potential, so that we could then work on how you, once you understand the principles of storytelling, what you can do with these things, then when we're ready and the audience have more access to the equipment and ways to watch this, then we'll know exactly what to do. So I want to finish by saying why it's so important. And this is a boy at the Tribeca Film Festival. He's a very cool boy blogger called Cooper, and he saw a virtual reality experience that I executed there called The Turning Forest, which is pure fantasy after all the sort of misery of some of the news experiences I've shown you. This is a magical journey through a forest where you ride on a monster. You play the monster's teeth with your eyes. You play the birds and the fish. It's quite a beautiful experience, and it was showcasing binaural spatialized sound produced by BBC's R&D department, and it was directed by Oscar Raby, who's an absolutely brilliant virtual reality artist in his company Vertov in Australia. And this is his response to it.
It was amazing. It's like the graphics were amazing, and normally when you play like Xbox like I do, it's normally like you just see like the front and you don't see anything around. When I was like turning around and looking up, I saw like trees and leaves falling, and the water was so realistic, and like getting lifted up, I really felt like I was getting lifted off the ground.
You like riding on the monster?
I did like riding on the monster, and when it turned to like ice, I was kind of like, where'd it go?
And so when people in television say to me, why are you doing this? There's no audience for it whatsoever. We should just be doing television. It's people like Cooper.
It was amazing.
It's people like Cooper I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of the next generation. I'm thinking of my children, because by the time they're a little bit older, and they're teenagers now, and I watch them with VR headsets squirming all over the room and moving around and finding things that BBC people think are really good, quite dull because they can't interact with them. I think as long as we're starting on the path to understand how to tell stories in really exciting ways with VR, we'll make them more interactive and more interesting as time goes by. But it's for that next generation. They will be the people that really benefit. Thank you.